Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day. Now, I was not going to do any of the other UDFAs. I was going to call it quits on the UDFA process here and just go back to the draft picks, go back to the news stuff, things like that. But there was an article with which we will close this video from Matthew Chabot on KCKingdom.com that talked me into making a video for Glendon Miller. So if you have the opportunity, go over there and read his article, KC Kingdom, Matthew Chabot. I think it's later in the video here, but I think it's called The 6 UDFA That Will Make the Chiefs, something like that. You can probably get there simply with that Google query. But I thought that this video was going to be important to make because there is a very, very interesting comparison to be made between Glendon Miller and another Kansas City Chief. So, a Kansas City Chief who played for the Chiefs, appeared in all 17 games last year, and got regular teams reps, and was, after all, a special teams ace for the team. Now, who is Glendon Miller? Well, courtesy of Math Bomb, we get the RAS here. And just like in the video earlier, where I talked about some of these things, I don't know where these numbers came from. So he wasn't at the combine, so it must have been the pro day. I couldn't find the numbers from the pro day. So I'm just, not that I have any reason to doubt Math Bomb or the RAS here, but I just want to put it out there. I cannot corroborate these numbers. But here we go. 6'2" and 7/10", 207 pounds, 15 reps on the bench press, 4.45 40 with a 1.56 10-yard split, a 38-inch vertical, a 9-foot 10-inch broad jump, and decent cone drills here, 4.25 on the short shuttle and 7.09 on the 3-cone. So a good-looking athlete here. But what does the scouting say? Well, NFL.com has him ranked as a 5.87. Now, when I was looking at the UDFAs for the Kansas City Chiefs and I came across all of the defensive backs, the flurry of defensive backs that you knew Brett Veach was going to sign to this team, I couldn't make heads or tail of it. There's a small corner. I'm blanking on his name right now. I believe his last name is Davis Miller, something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, he was a guy that was getting a lot of hype leading up to the draft as this could be a late round guy. I think it's possible. He's a pretty good athlete. I don't know with the tape there. So I was kind of going to sit out on this. But one of my biggest regrets from this channel, you've probably heard me say this before if you've been around for any period of time, I always do videos on the UDFA that I think could make the roster, because that becomes something where week 8, all of a sudden, Jack Cochran's the starting linebacker. People can say, well, who's this guy? I've got some information on him. And last year, I skipped Christian Roland-Wallace. I thought he could make I thought he was an NFL player. I didn't think he could make the team. I thought that the Chiefs had too many defensive backs, and Christian Roland-Wallace was not an exceptional athlete. I said that probably he's going to be in the NFL. Probably it's not going to be with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I skipped the video. I regret that. Here we have Glendon Miller with a 5.87 rating from NFL.com, average backup or special teamer. When I look at his tape, I see someone that is going to be on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, full transparency, I did not see that. I had to go back after I read the article from KC Kingdom and said, okay, I'm missing something. And I think I was. He is listed as a D-back everywhere you look. DB. He played predominantly safety in college last season. So he does things all over the football field. That's why he's listed as a DB. He did a lot of slot corner stuff for Maryland last year because they needed it. They had problems with their defensive backs, and he was not great in that spot. Did not look good in that spot. But he put his head down and he kept working and he laid a few big hits along the way. Now, that's all you ask in the NFL. If you have a guy who has the tools, you just say sometimes you're going to have to play out of position. And I think that's happened a few times in the past few years for the Kansas City Chiefs. You had Najee Johnson, who is, in my opinion, an NFL corner, is, in my opinion, a number 4 cornerback in the NFL, but he looks terrible when he's your number 2 corner, right? So those things are on the table in the NFL, and it's stuff that you have to go with. Now, here is the comparison. That top RAS there is Christian Roland-Wallace from last year. The bottom is Glendon Miller. If you look at the base number there, RAS 5.01, RAS 9.26. The bottom of the Chiefs' depth chart at the defensive back positions is likely going to go through some churning. I think that Glendon Miller is going to make the team this year if we just compare the two. So somehow Christian Roland-Wallace has longer arms at 32.5 inches because Glendon Miller looks like he has wings out there on the football field. So I don't understand how that visual comes across, but they have similar arm length. Glendon Miller has slightly smaller hands, 8.38 compared to 9. But, well, not but, the entire left half of the screen here is very comparable besides height. So 5'11 for Christian Roland-Wallace, 6'2 for Glendon Miller. That is a good size for a safety. Christian Roland-Wallace does crack the 200-pound barrier, 201. Glendon Miller is 207. Christian Roland-Wallace slightly better at the bench press, 17 reps compared to 15 for Glendon Miller. Glendon Miller takes the vertical leap by a half an inch at 38 versus 37.5, but Christian Roland-Wallace takes the broad jump at 9 foot 11 inches versus 9 foot 10 inches for Glendon Miller. Now, stunning how similar they are, down to the fact that both of them have good verts and both of them have terrible broad jumps. On the right half of this screen is where things start to tip heavily towards Glendon Miller. Christian Roland-Wallace ran a 4.63 40-yard dash compared to 4.45 for Glendon Miller. A 20-yard split of 2.51 for Glendon Miller versus 2.67 for Christian Roland-Wallace. And the 1.56 10-yard split for Glendon Miller versus 1.6 from Christian Roland-Wallace. And then you have a very, very, very poor short shuttle for Christian Roland-Wallace. The 90.98 score there with a 4.52 time. A 4.25 time for Glendon Miller is a 6.76 score. And then you have the 3-cone drill of 7.18 versus a 3-cone drill of 7.09. Glendon Miller is bigger. Glendon Miller is faster. Now, is he the football player that is Christian Roland-Wallace? Christian Roland-Wallace proved on the football field that he belongs at the NFL level. And yeah, he runs 0.2 of a second slower at the 40 than does Glendon Miller. But if you have poor play recognition, that 0.2 of a second gets eaten up by an approaching wide receiver very, very quickly. So, the prowess on the field for Glendon Miller is, in my opinion, enough. He is right down here. So, where are we at? 39 tackles last season, 3 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 2 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery. All over the field. 2023, a very similar story. 37 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 4 interceptions, and 5 pass deflections. He's a guy who is all over the field. Now, up here, these are the snap counts played by Christian Roland-Wallace last season. Again, appeared in all 17 games, started 2 games. ended up with 194 defensive snaps and 249 special team snaps. I'm not going to say that Christian Roland-Wallace will not be a Kansas City Chief in 2025, but I think it's likely that someone who was a Kansas City Chief and a contributing member of the Chiefs secondary last season will not be in this coming season. And there's a lot of guys at the sort of, what would you say, maybe 43 through 53 spots on the Kansas City Chiefs that it's easy to forget about and who cycle in and out of the lineup throughout the season because they go back and forth between the practice squad. But somebody there is going to lose a job to Glendon Miller. And just for reference sake, Christian Roland-Wallace was a 5.80 rating by NFL.com, Glendon Miller a 5.87. So he's a better athlete, he's a bigger athlete, and he has better tape than did Christian Roland-Wallace coming out of college. And again, not to pick on Christian Roland-Wallace, just to offer a point of reference. That point of reference being Christian Roland-Wallace was a guy who contributed for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And if he was able to do so, in the ways that he is limited, but he also obviously has strengths, but in the ways that he was limited, Glendon Miller is not limited. So it is likely, therefore, that Glendon Miller is able to come in and perform as well. When I look at his film, I don't see a whole lot of suddenness. He's not a guy who's going to shock you on film that comes from off screen and just blows somebody up. He blows a lot of people up, but you see him coming, right? He's a fast defensive back who is constantly in pursuit. That's one of the things I didn't take a note on it, but when you watch him, he's always moving. He's always moving. If his receiver has broken down and is sitting in his zone, he's trying to bait the quarterback and he's trying to get an angle and he's trying to read the quarter. Not a lot of guys do that, right? A lot of guys will just, with the wide receiver, look towards the quarterback. He doesn't do that. He is nasty on the field. He can play with abandon, and he is a safety who wants the opponent to think twice when they're on the field. This is a Steve Spagnuolo type defensive back. I think he's going to come in and do very well for himself in this defense as long as he's up to snuff, right? Like, you don't know how it translates to the NFL from college until you see it. But this is the article that I was referencing earlier. 6 Chiefs UDFAs most likely to make the roster. Kansas City added several players after the draft. Here are some who could crack the team day one. And I want to tell you, he includes a player in his list that I did not. So you want a little extra coverage on the UDFA, the spicy UDFA class for the Kansas City Chiefs. Go over there to KCKingdom.com and the article by Matthew Chabot. Now, here's what he says. Miller was my number 2 player on the list of UDFAs for the Chiefs to target after an exceptional year at Maryland. Meaning, at the conclusion of the draft, before the Chiefs had signed anyone, he had Glendon Miller ranked number 2 on the list of players that he wanted. I'd be interested in seeing who number 1 was. But Miller started his career as a corner, but moved around in the secondary to find more playing time with guys like Deonte Banks, Tarheeb Still, and Jacorian Bennett taking most of the corner reps. And Jacorian Bennett was a phenomenal athlete, if I'm not mistaken. So that is no mystery why he gets reps at corner. Miller played more corner this year for the Terps as their secondary was one of the worst in college, but Miller was a highlight for them. Here is what I said about him earlier this year. Miller is a very under-the-radar name, mainly because of the abysmal performance of the Maryland secondary last season. But Miller transitioned from corner to safety late in his college career and ended up playing great over the top for the Terps. Miller had 7 interceptions over the last 2 years, and he can play corner, safety, and in the slot. His versatility is valuable at a minimum. He will compete for a spot on special teams. With his big frame and versatility, I will likely have Miller in my day one roster projections, as I think he will impress the staff. The Chiefs are looking for DB depth both at safety and corner, and Miller can potentially kill two birds with one stone. He also has some experience on special teams, which is often how UDFAs earn roster spots. Regardless, Miller will be in the conversation when cut day comes around August. I agree with this. I think that Miller will likely be on the 53, even if I did have to go and re-scout him in order to get there. But hey, your friendly neighborhood armchair is not perfect. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.